You all look okay to me, but these are the times, and my clients look like you sometimes, and we just hope that the evening will go more smoothly. I'm Professor William Hellerstein. I teach constitutional law and criminal procedure. I'll probably be teaching more than 100 of you this year. Tonight, I'm here to serve as Master of Ceremonies, introduce you to our speakers and to the members of the faculty and the administration who are present this evening and whose only purpose in life, professionally, that is to teach you and to assist you in your careers in the law school and even beyond in the best way possible, so as to make you stay with us and your entry into the profession top dollar. As MC, I am, of course, allowed to make a few remarks. Eventually, I think I will. But first, let me introduce you to the members of the faculty and the administration who are present this evening, and let me ask my colleagues who are in the jury box on both sides if they would just stand when I call your name so I can introduce you briefly. Because of the hour, I'm not going to give you the entire biography of my colleagues and their publications and their other awards. I'm just going to do it straight out by introducing first Professor Mary Ellen Fullerton, specialist in federal court civil procedure. Professor Stacy Kaplow, the director of our clinical education program. To her left, Professor Marilyn Walter, director of our legal writing program. To her left, Professor Claire Kelly, specialist in international matters and civil practice. And I think next to Professor Kelly is one of our new members of the faculty, and this year we have a substantial infusion of new and young blood. And I believe that's Michael Cahill, by way of the state of Illinois, and a criminal law specialist, and to his left is Professor Jane Wessler, our legal writing instructors. To her left is Phil Allred, the director of, I believe, all of our technological operations in the school. And to his left is Tom Parker, who is the director of the Office of Student Affairs. And I believe to Tom's left is a gentleman I have not seen for 20 years, but that's Professor Charles Knapp from New York University Law School, who is visiting us this year. And
from Hastings.
Oh, Hastings.
Yeah, I've gotten around since we've left.
You're looking great. Contract special. And to his left, Professor Paul Schwartz, fresh from a year in Germany, our intellectual property, computer technology law major. And seated in the pit there, right next to Paul, is Myron Tchaikovsky, who's already, we were already indebted to him as the director of admissions. And next to Myron is Joanne Rudelman, the associate director of admissions. Going back to the front row, Professor Betsy Fajans, one of our legal writing professors. Next to her, Professor Molly Folk, legal writing and criminal law. Next to Molly is Professor Eve Carey, criminal law and legal writing. Next to Eve is Sarah Robbins, professor of law and law librarian. And next to Sarah is one of our new members of the faculty, Professor Heidi Petroser, a specialist in constitutional law. Next to Heidi is another one of our new faculty members, Professor Jason Lazone, another common law specialist. Next to Jason is Professor Edward Chang, also new to our faculty, specializing in evidence and criminal law. Those other two gentlemen, I think, you have you can see. Going around the back is Professor Nan Hunter, the director of the Health Law Center and a specialist in civil procedure. To her left is Professor Richard Allen, civil procedure and entertainment law. Professor Allen, Professor John Meehan, King of Wills. Professor Joe Crayer, the King of all. Because Professor Crayer has been teaching at this law school for more than 50 years, and he celebrated that several years ago, a specialist in corporate and commercial law. To my left is Professor Neil Cohen, specialist in commercial law and constitutional law. And Neil's left is Professor Brian Cumberford, a tax haven in Florida. Next to Brian is Professor George Johnson, who specializes in land use planning. George, Professor Ursula Bentley, criminal law and capital punishment specialist, the defendant of people charged with capital. What she does to her first year classes is her business. To her left, my colleague, Professor Susan Herman, a criminal procedure and constitutional law specialist, general counsel at the ACLU. And to the left, Professor Martha Berger, I should say the queen of evidence, or king, one of the leading experts in the country on evidence and civil procedure. Back to the jury box. Seated in the back row, but in the first row of the jury box is Linda Harvey, the Director of Communication. Suzanne Dennis, our registrar. Dean Siegel, our Director of Institutional Advancement. Wayne Greenberg, our Director of Humanitarian Affairs. Elizabeth Kane, our Associate Director of Curriculum Planning and Public Interest. Joan King, our Director of Career Center, I should say. Gerard Anderson, Director of Financial Aid. And John Vlasic, our Bursar. On my right, Associate Dean and Professor of Law, Carol Ziegler. My son, Associate Dean Joel Gora, introduced to Wexler Laker. On my left, Professor C. Rockwell, introduced to his left, John Israel Hamilton, I introduced him later. Dean Gerba, Professor of Law, Director of Development, and the Dean of Admissions, and the Abstin. And I think that does it. Whenever I look out at him and mention the fact, I'm aware that many, if not all of you, have substantial amounts of trepidation, mixed with feelings of excitement, even pride. The trepidation, I think, comes from the fact that you've heard a lot of horror stories about law school, particularly the first year, books have been written, and there's a general fear of the unknown. We're excited because it is unknown, and also having new beginnings. You're proud, I hope, because you graduated, each of you, from fine institutions. You did well enough to be accepted by another splendid institution, Brooklyn Law School. And contributing to trepidation, I think, and it's going to last for a while, is the very nature of law study. You will be introduced to new concepts and new ways of thinking, and much of what you learn, particularly in first year, will not resemble anything you've seen before. But first-year students tend to overlook that each one of us was at one time a first-year student, and despite some of our years passing, we still remember glimpses of what it was like. And I feel I'm pretty safe in saying that no one of my colleagues is a Professor Kingsfield. If you know who Professor Kingsfield is, I mean, you know that the stereotypical professor from the paper chase of the Harvard Law School that used to terrorize everybody. His type really was, I think, not even present in Legally Blonde. Either that or Reese Witherspoon totally co-opted. But I don't recall Legally Blonde having a Kingsfield. But my colleagues and I, we will challenge you to talk, to think. But I don't think any of us will tell you, as Kingsfield did in Paper Chase, and I guess in modern times, you know, get on your cell phone and call your parents and tell them there's serious doubt about you being lawyers. We will not do that to you. Quite the contrary. If you have not already heard it, we are considered a user-friendly school. Faculty are accessible to students, as is administrations, and students, very importantly, are very supportive of one another. Being a law school nerd, a species that inhabits other law schools, is not with us a class act. And our ethos, and I think I'm speaking for my colleagues, being a law student, is, and even a lawyer, even a Class A personality, hard-driving courtroom warrior, is a person who exercises skill and grace and creativity, but does it in a dignified fashion. So consistent with our tradition at this law school, our goal is to reduce your anxieties and to invite you to enjoy the excitement of legal education, and to assure you that if you approach your work here with the same degree of confidence that the school has had in you and accepting you, your effort here will be successful. And one last word before a word about our profession. You're aware by now that you've chosen to enter a profession about which there is considerable cynicism in the land. Jokes about lawyers abound. Books with titles such as Shark Tales you can find on Barnes & Noble tables as we speak. But there's another side to the profession. And in a recent best-selling biography of President John Adams, by David McCullough, Adams had been vilified for defending the British soldiers who were accused of murdering colonists in the Boston Massacre. And here's what John Adams had to say about being a lawyer. Now, to what higher object, to what greater character can any mortal aspire than to be possessed of all of his knowledge, well digested and ready at command, to assist the feeble and the friendless, to discountenance the haughty and lawless, to procure redress to wrongs, the advancement of right, to assert and maintain liberty and virtue, to discourage and abolish tyranny and vice. Take the tyranny and hold the vice. And if this isn't good enough for you, then think of the words of that great German sociologist Max von Weber, who said that no one hates lawyers to the extent that they want their child not to be one. So this evening you'll learn a lot about who we are, what we are, the faculty, the staff, the students. We consider the BLS community, one of which we're generally proud to be part of, one of which we want you to feel most welcome and appreciated. We also want you to accept that each of you is now a valued member of our community. Each of you brings different strengths. Each of you enriches the classroom experience, and you will. All of us, speaking for myself, I always take away from my classes new perspectives. When students are willing to question assumptions that I've made throughout my life and may express and lapse into, but my wife reminds me very often, almost daily, that the Second World War is over and not everyone thinks the way I do. A little later in the program, I'm going to give you an idea about who you are and what your class of 2006 and 7 brings to our law school community. Let me emphasize that tonight is only the beginning of our efforts to make you feel a part of our community. The next few weeks, you will be invited to meet faculty, fellow students, and a number of informal events. We don't consider ourselves party animals, forbid, but we do work with invitation. And I hope that each of you will take advantage of every opportunity to get to know us, to get to know one another. You'll be pleasantly surprised. Now let me introduce to you, speaking on behalf of the students, John Rizio Hamilton, who's entering his 3rd year, who will give you the view of the school from his perspective. John stands at the top of his class. He's an editor. He is the editor-in-chief of the Book Law Review. He was in my common law class 1st year, and he just finished a year in our Second Look program, which is an innocence project, which I direct. And I've come to know John very well. He's a graduate of Johns Hopkins University, and he is a journalist. Was a journalist, may still be, prior to coming to law school. He is an excellent writer and a charming human being. It's my pleasure to introduce John Rizio Hamilton to you. There's only one thing about him that's negative. He's a Philadelphia Eagles fan. John?
When I was in college, I had this strange experience of living for a year with the guy known around campus as the Pantless Wonder. This young man spent the vast majority of his time in the same t-shirt, the same pair of boxer shorts, sitting on the couch with a beer and a ball game on television. And his state of undress became so natural to him that on the morning he made his reputation, he woke up terribly late for class, scrambled out of bed, slipped on a pair of flip-flops, and ran out the door. And only when he got to the lecture hall did he actually notice that from the waist down he was wearing nothing but his drawers in front of more than 100 college students. And the campus star was born, and they called him the Pantless Wonder. And in addition to never wearing pants, he hardly ever showered. I mean, this guy was so gross that before I agreed to let him move in with me, I had him sign a personal hygiene contract. It required him to shower at least 3 times a week. That was the best I could negotiate with this man. To wear his pants at least half the time, clean the food from his beard once a day, constantly keep the door to his room closed. And I worked on this contract for days. I had fine print and large print, official sounding language. I asked his mother to co-sign. I had liquidated damages in case of breach. And of course, he broke every single provision of the contract repeatedly because he was, after all, the Pantless Wonder. And just this past weekend, I attended his wedding, and it was a very surreal experience for me. There he was, a groom at the altar, getting married to a person, and a smart, beautiful, loving person at that. He was fully showered and shaved, wearing a tuxedo. Now, I can't say he went from ugly duckling to swan, but by God, he had his pants on. And he was also wearing a special scented body spray mandated by the missus. And I thought to myself, he's an actual responsible adult now, a man, not counting the body spray thing. And I thought that things change and people change, but they do it slowly, sort of bit by bit, almost imperceptibly even, until one day you look up and the cumulative effect is really jarring. And you ask yourself, has it been that long? And people often describe law school as a time of change. And in general terms, that's true. I remember that 2 years ago, I sat exactly where you are this evening, and I wondered what I got myself into. Nothing was clear to me, not even the questions I should be asking myself. I had no idea what law school would be like, or where it would lead me, whether I would like it, or whether, as I've heard, and I'm sure you have a million times now, whether it would change me, and if so, how it would change me. It did change me, and it still is, in ways I couldn't have anticipated, and may not even now be aware. And you guys are sitting on the cusp of great personal and professional change yourselves. And at the end of the day, you'll make your own way through it, and you'll do your own thing. And I'm sure you're getting a lot of advice and predictions from people, but no one can tell you what your end game is. That's for you to chart yourself. In the meantime, however, what I can tell you this evening concerns how to avoid one particularly nightmarish scenario, being the figurative law school version of the Pantless Wonder. The guy who gets called on in class, is woefully unprepared, and promptly feels intellectually naked in front of 100 of your peers. No one wants to be that guy. And when I was in your spot not so long ago, it was the first thing on my mind. And so now I'd like to offer you 4 strategies for keeping your pants on in class, so to speak. First, the boring failsafe, do the reading. They very much want you to do the reading. You're paying enough for it, definitely. And most of the time, it's actually interesting. Some professors, such as Professor Aaron Tversky, have designed ways to avoid the other 3 tips I'm about to give you. So it's important to do the reading. They do this by choosing a row in the classroom and then calling on students as they proceed through that row in heartless, methodical fashion. And if you encounter a teacher like this, you've got to do the reading or you take your chances. For the rest, though, there's a few things you can do. The preemption strategy. If you know the answer to a question, raise your hand and volunteer. Teachers like to spread the questions around to get a lot of people involved in the discussion, friendly and diverse and everything. And they don't like to call on people who volunteer a lot for that reason. It's a very simple inverse relationship. The more often you volunteer, the less often they will call on you. You've got to work that equation, all right? Work it. When you know the answer, give the answer. In return, you get a reputation as an active student, as well as cover for when you haven't done the reading. The Alt-Tab keystroke combination strategy. You need small motor skills for this one. Now that laptops and internet connections are standard in almost all of these classrooms, Students are constantly going online during class for whatever reason, news or email or IMing their friends, but they also continue to get called on. Professors have personally told me that they roam the aisles looking for students they believe are online, calling them prey, and then they pounce with an impossible question. They are going to prowl for you. So the Alt-Tab keystroke combination, which quickly minimizes your browser and replaces it with your notes, is more crucial than ever. You need to be like Mr. Miyagi quick with it. Practice it, love it, hone your reflexes, okay? And last, the decoy strategy. If you don't like reading, and you don't like raising your hand to be a volunteer, but you do like IMing your friends, then the very least you can do is find out the students who will volunteer and then sit next to them. This is very important, because a student who volunteers often creates a mysterious, invisible safe zone. Instead of several seats around. Again, because professors are looking to diversify the classroom discussion, they'll often ask questions of people sitting in different parts of the room. If you are next to like the I know the answer, me guy, you'll be in his safe zone and less likely to be called on. You might not want to hang out with him after class, but definitely consider sitting next to him during class. Now, with all that said, I'd like to give you just a few more words of more serious advice. If you're going to concentrate on 1 year of law school more than any other, make it this year. Because of how job opportunities and journal opportunities are scheduled and structured and sort of evaluated, your first year is the most important. That doesn't make a lot of sense to a lot of people, and I wish it were otherwise, and so do a lot of people, but it's not otherwise, it's the case. So make the most of this year. Don't treat it like college the sequel, because that will cost you, both in a variety of choices you have after school and in real dollars. Also, make a point to develop relationships with faculty members. As Professor Hellerstein said, they're here to teach you and advise you and help you, and they take all parts of that job very, very seriously. Pretty much any student you talk to around Brooklyn will tell you that the faculty here is very supportive and very accessible. So seek out professors whose classes interest you. Go to their office and ask questions. See if they need a research assistant and participate in class. Because developing those relationships will serve you well while you're here and when you're trying to get a job later on. And it's also very important to keep your mind open. Some of you may think you know what you want to do after law school, and you might, but you may also find something else that really captivates you. You'll have the opportunity to experience firm life and corporate law, public interest life in a variety of contexts, clinical work, and lawyering on many different levels. Make a point to sample each of those things because one of them might surprise you. And relax. Although this year is important, it's not the defining moment of your life in any way. Don't get so uptight about getting the highest paying job known to man that law school becomes nothing more than a very, very stressful stepping stone. This is really a remarkable time in your lives. You've got 3 years. You're going to meet hundreds of people in an amazing, endless city. And for most of you, this is probably the last time that your job is going to be simply to learn. Learn about history, the larger world, the principles around which we organize ourselves as a society. And you should savor that. Slow down a little bit. Immerse yourself both in the study of law and in New York City. And last, be conscious of yourself and your goals and how you plan to use your new abilities. Within the next few years, you'll develop skills with which you can affect people's lives in powerful and very real ways. And that's quite a tool, and how you use it matters, because it can help as much as it can hurt. And as you sample different experiences here, always be thinking about the ends toward which you're using your skills. The greatest challenge a law student faces, at least the greatest challenge I've faced, is how to satisfy their need for money, and perhaps a desire for lots of extra money, while also making a contribution to a worthwhile fight. So think about that. Give that some real thought, what your contribution can be. And definitely, after you've heard this talk. Do not get caught in class with your pants down.
Well, that was great, John. I really like the first part. Since it's going to be on tape and on the web, even my colleagues who are absent, if we listen to it carefully, we will pick off. So the strategy is, I don't know if you've done them a great favor, because if you choose to sit next to somebody who's always answering, you're not going to be in a safe setting. As far as the email stuff, I have a special place reserved for those who are making dates while I'm talking. Because I'm from, I didn't know from this stuff. And all of a sudden, you got cell phones going off. Watch out for me. I'm a sweet guy. Don't. Thanks, John. All right. I told you I'd tell you something about yourself. Well, here we go. Who you are, where you come from. Entering class is comprised of 497 students, selected from over 5,800 applicants. 321 of you have enrolled in our full-time division, while 176 got chosen to enter our part-time division. The consensus is that you represent a desirable diversity of background and experience, as well as an exciting mix of social, geographic, and cultural characteristics. In terms of places of birth, you come to us from 5 continents, 34 countries, 34 U.S. states, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. You are legal residents of 32 states, the District of Columbia and Puerto Rico. 24 students in the class who are not U.S. citizens come to us from 17 foreign countries. With a class-wide average age of 25, the youngest in your ranks is 20, and the oldest is 40. 49% of you are women. You represent 175 colleges and universities which are located in 38 states, D.C., and 2 foreign countries. 75% of your class earned baccalaureate degrees prior to this year. 14% of you have been out of college for at least 5 years. And 4% of you graduated 10 more years ago. As undergraduates, you collectively pursued 71 different fields of major academic study. 30 of you have earned master's degrees or doctorates in various disciplines prior to entering law school. A wide range of experiences are ruled for Berkeley law students, and this year is no different. Included among your classmates are a member of the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, a chef, a doctor and registered nurse, to some of us very good, a glass blower, who knows, a fashion model, I would say nothing, and a corporal in the U.S. Marines, I better say nothing. One of your classmates competed in track and field for Canada in the Junior Pan American Games. One of you worked as a figure skating instructor. Another was a gymnastics instructor. Some of you come to us from the publishing world. One is the managing editor of Parade magazine. Another was the publisher of a magazine called The Wine Journal. I hope you get samples and bring them. Others served as interns for the magazines O and People. We also have some accomplished journalists among us who have written for Reuters News, Fortune, Small Business Magazine, and The Onion. One of you is the chief financial officer of La Nación, the leading newspaper in Argentina. Several of you worked in the sports arena for such organizations as Major League Baseball, the Madison Square Garden Network, the Brooklyn Cyclones baseball team, the Washington Capitals hockey team, and one of you was a volunteer at the Salt Lake City Winter Olympics. A number of you have worked for members of corporate America, such as Ford Motor Company, American Express, Visa, USA, and ExxonMobil. On the international front, this year's class speaks more than 20 languages and dialects other than English. Among the less familiar are Wolof and Farsi, Urdu, Gujarati, Hindi, Ukrainian, Armenian, and Portuguese. Some of you have put your language skills to the test while working as a tour guide at the Louvre in Paris, teaching English in such countries as China, Thailand, Malaysia, Laos, Czech Republic, and El Salvador. One of you worked as an intern for the European Union Parliament, while another worked for the U.S. State Department at the American Consulate in China. Another worked as an archaeological intern for the Supreme Council of Antiquities in Giza, Egypt. One of you even studied at a 10-day Buddhist temple. The arts have not escaped your interest. One of you performed with the Martha Graham School of Contemporary Dance, while another wrote the musical score for a children's musical based on The Jungle Book by Roger Kipling. A number of you did internships in the entertainment industry. Several of you worked in television for Court TV, MTV, Nickelodeon, CBS News, and the History Channel. One of you worked as a production assistant for the television show American Idol. Others were interns for the programs 2020 and The Charlie Rose Show. Still others gained exposure to the movie and music industries through internships at Miramax Films, Sony Music, RCA, Columbia, Epic, and Interscope Records. In keeping with our reputation as a center for public interest here at the school, your class includes many who have also a serious commitment to public service, as exemplified by their involvement with Habitat for Humanity, Amnesty International, United Way, Special Olympics, Meals on Wheels, AmeriCorps, and the Heritage for the Blind. Several of you were Peace Corps volunteers in Nicaragua, Senegal, and Kyrgyzstan. One of you worked for the Human Rights Clinic, a project of the Health and Human Rights Organization, Doctors of the World. Not surprisingly, a number of you have worked as legal interns, researchers, and paralegals at some of the nation's busiest law offices, corporations, and government institutions. Some of these include internships at the White House, the U.S. State Department, U.S. Supreme Court, U.S. Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office, and Citigroup. Several of you worked for senatorial and congressional offices on both sides of the aisle. Many of you worked in politics for several candidates involved in some of the most heated races in the country. In fact, if one of you out there can recall, you were a communications intern for Governor Ray Davis of California. So many stories and so little time. But all in all, we're thrilled with the extraordinary blend of students who have converged from many different paths to arrive at this point here. Can you guess who's to? Well, you have 3 to 4 years to figure it out as you join us and become colleagues in quite a class. It's now my pleasure to introduce as our next speaker, on behalf of the faculty, my colleague, Mr. Anthony Seebach. Mr. Seebach is, I guess, in short, a king of torts. We have several kings of torts. You know, some of the old city-states in Greece had more than one king. We have that too. Professor Torsten, he's a king of torts too. Professor Seebach is a graduate of Cornell University, a Master of Philosophy from Oxford, a JD from Yale Law School, and a Doctor of Philosophy from Princeton, Touche. He specializes in tort theory, and in jurisprudence. His accomplishments, his publications are extensive. His current research involves the way tort theory law is used to resolve and remedy social problems. Since 9/11, he has been much in demand. Of course, his articles, his presentations on the Workers' Compensation Fund, National Newsday, The Times. He also quite often on major networks on various tort issues and gun control and a whole host of things. After he graduated law school, he clerked the chief judge of the United States District Court of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, Judge Kahn. He's been with us, I think, probably more than 10 years now. But he is still a young guy, full of fire. It's my pleasure to introduce him to you.
Thank you very much, Will. I've been asked to speak to you on behalf of the faculty and to welcome you to the law school and to the study of law. I'm honored to address you. I'm also aware of the huge responsibility I have, since many of you have developed some preconceptions about the law from some of the movies that came out this summer. I feel it is my duty to point out to you that some of these movies may have created misimpression. For example, despite appearances, Legally Blonde 2 does not give an accurate depiction of the legislative process from the lawyer's point of view, although it might be pretty good training if you're interested in a career combining fashion and lobbying. Likewise, a divorce will not help you figure out if you want to practice family law, even in Paris, although it might help you decide to move to Paris. There goes the lecturer destroying the school. No, court's property. I put it back. Finally, despite what you may have thought, Freddy versus Jason is not the case that you'll be reading. Although I have to admit that at times it did not like what you see in the movies. What is it like? I think the faculty of a law school must present a bewildering picture to new students. On the one hand, we are an ever-present, in fact, unavoidable aspect of your life. In fact, we could describe this evening, I guess, as predators. And yet, we are such a varied and large group of people that it's not clear whether what we do can be described in any simple or comprehensive way. Nonetheless, I want to take a stab at explaining what I personally think binds us together and what it is that each of us has an obligation to do for you. I think that the most important thing that you can get out of law school is a sense of what it is you love about being a lawyer. Right now, it is unlikely that many of you have much of an idea about what law is about or what being a lawyer is like. It's our job to help you, as best we can, develop an idea of what it is that you like about law. I'm not saying that each of you will achieve this goal by the time you graduate. For many of you, figuring out what makes lawyering meaningful to you will take a long time. Our job, nonetheless, is to give you the tools to do just that. Discovering meaning in the practice of law is different from learning to be a skillful lawyer, although it is related in an important way. There are lawyers who are very successful, according to conventional standards, who neither respect nor love the law. I cannot say whether they are happy, but even if they are, I think their happiness is built on a weak foundation. As the last few years have shown, nothing in our world is secure. Our economic, professional, and personal lives can be thrown into disarray without warning. Those who looked to the law to make them wealthy, powerful, or even to achieve their own particular vision of justice must admit that the condition of their happiness on these external ends is to place their future in very fickle hands. What might endure in the midst of such change? Family and community, of course, but I think that the practice of law also offers a way for you to develop within yourselves an identity that imparts both strength and dignity. The real question, of course, is what are the core features of this identity, and how can we help you to achieve it? This part till now is kind of vague and non-controversial. The next part you may not find so persuasive. I believe that at its core, lawyering is about helping other people achieve their goals. That is to say, a lawyer is to be loyal to another. Of course, since we often end up choosing our areas of law based on where our own economic, social, or political goals coincide with those of our clients, we tend to forget that in the end, we are lawyering to promote our clients' interests and not our own. Some people have trouble accepting this idea, this claim that I'm making, and at some point they realize that they cannot find meaning in pursuing someone else's goals, regardless of whether the client is the people of New York in the DA's office, or someone accused of a crime in the public defender's office, or an injured plaintiff in a fraud liability suit, or the defendant corporation in that very same suit. It may sound strange to you now, but there are many lawyers who have found meaning in each of those roles by taking pride in being the agent for someone else. Now, I suppose it might seem odd to you that I should find something profound in a vision of law that asks you to learn to accept another's interests is more important than your own. But I ask you to stop and think for a moment about what you can achieve by being another's faithful agent. In this society, a lot of society's wealth and power is distributed and redistributed as a result of the constant conflict and engagement of people through their lawyers. Sometimes the changes are dramatic, but usually they are very tiny and imperceptible. Contract is drafted and then breached or renegotiated. Accidents occur. Compensation is paid. And yet, as a result of these thousands of of little encounters every day, the world changes, eventually, in big ways. People's lives are built on these changes. These changes can only happen, however, because people have interests that must be reconciled. And they can only be reconciled if both parties can trust their lawyers to represent their interests faithfully. That's why I think there's something meaningful and satisfying about learning to serve the interests of others. And the concept of representation in all this is much more complex and rich than one might first imagine. So what is the faculty's role in all this? Isn't our job just to teach you how to be skillful and leave the rest up to you? Well, I don't think so. There are two things about this faculty that have always impressed me and which made a difference to me when I think about where I wanted to start my career. The first is its diversity, and the second is its commitment by each professor to the study of the practice of law. Diversity matters because there is, in my mind, and as I've suggested, no single way to serve others because there is no single type of client. If we are to help you to figure out what you love about the law, you deserve as many different kinds of professors as there are ways of being a lawyer. I hope you'll take advantage of the diversity that you'll find at Brooklyn to find the kind of lawyering that speaks to you. Second, our commitment to the practice of law matters because there is tremendous dignity, in my opinion, in all areas of law. That are available to you. There's dignity in criminal law, public interest law, or government service. We're going to help you to figure out what you love about the law. You deserve professors who take seriously the choices you make, the choices you will make, and to help you learn about the choices you have. This faculty embraces the idea that all areas of the practice of law are equally important, equally challenging, and most importantly, are equally capable of providing meaning to you throughout your career. Now, I know that you have, at this point, more than enough to worry about as you start the semester. You've been given a lot of rules that you need to, I think, memorize, and you know where to work your laptop a little bit better, perhaps, than you can. And I'm not going to help you by giving you yet more weighty things to think about. But if we do our job, hopefully you will start looking for what you love about the law without even knowing it. If you are lucky, at some point, you'll find yourself gripped by some part of the practice of law. And you'll care about it simply because it becomes unavoidable to you. You fell in love with this thing. Simply because it captures your imaginations and your energies. Helping you reach that is part of our job here. And to the extent that we succeed, I think it's the part of being a teacher which gives us the greatest satisfaction. Now, actually, Will has now stolen my punchline at the end of this talk because I was going to say that I do look forward to seeing this semester. And in fact, if you were to ask me what movie I would like to see made that would, in fact, reflect the law as I imagine it really is, it would, of course, be a film version of The King of Torts. But it has not yet been cast, and I'm still waiting for that phone call. But we'll see maybe by next year's out. But thank you very much.
Thank you, Tony. Our last speaker is our dean, John Wexler. Dean Wexler, graduate of Yale Law School, got an undergraduate degree at Cornell and a master's in education at Harvard University. She began her professional career upon graduation actually in this building. What remains of it, as it was originally constructed, clerking for that gentleman over there. Fourth in from left. Judge from the right. She, former Chief Judge Senior Judge Jackie Weinstein was one of the greatest judges you will come to learn. If you may not know it now, one of the greatest federal judges by my book and by many other books in this great land. After clerking for Judge Weinstein, Dean Wexler worked with the law firm of Deborah Boyds at Clinton. He's a professor of law at NYU Law School, and in 1985, Wexler, myself, Professor Cohen, Professor Carmel was not here this evening, we all joined this faculty en masse. And I can't believe it's that many years, but it was a wonderful opportunity to come to this law school and to be surrounded not only with my colleagues who were here, but to have the kinds of colleagues who joined us on ensemble. Dean has been leading our law school since 1994, and prior to that she had been Associate Dean for Academic Affairs for 6 years. A list of honors would take a good part of the evening, but let me just tell you some of her activities. She is one of the most prominent members of the New York Bar. She is formerly Vice President of the Association of Bar of the City of New York, has served on numerous committees. She's President-elect of the Federal Bar Council, longtime member of the Women's Bar Association, serving on the Board of Directors and twice as Vice President, on the American Bar Association's Continuing Education Committee, the New Leaders Planning Committee, the Independent Law School Committee. She's a member of the American Law Institute, Board of Directors of the Practicing Law Institute, the Fund for Modern Courts. And there's a lot going on in this town when she gets rolling. She's been on a good deal of her specialty prior to the extension to the deanship was in the areas of family law and trust and estates. As I think you'll perceive, if not this evening, but very soon, Dean Wexler embodies the spirit of this law school. She's committed, energetic, I would say to a fault, creative and sensitive to the needs of the students and the goals of the law school. For me personally, it's her sense of humor that she retains even in tense moments that captures what the law school is. The study of law to us is a very serious thing, and we take it seriously. But were that all there was, and if we took ourselves seriously all the time, it would be counterproductive. In fact, it would be boring. And Dean Wexler, I think, brings to the study of law, to the running of a very complex operation, the seriousness and the humor that keeps life moving, keeps us from getting bored, and meets the challenges of the day. And it is my great pleasure to introduce to you Dean Wexler.
Thank you, Professor Hauerstein. And good evening to all of you. I am just delighted to see you here this evening. I know that some of you may be wondering whether you made the right choice to come to law school. You may be asking yourself, should I be sitting here tonight? And for the next few minutes, I'm going to try to answer that question and explain why it's a good thing that you're in law school, and why your decision to study law at Brooklyn Law School is the right one. You may not know it, but law schools are a fairly recent invention. Until modern times, a would-be lawyer mastered the cultural tradition and the basic skills necessary for a law practice by clerking for a number of years in a law office. Although this kind of apprenticeship was a satisfactory way of teaching rules and basic skills, it failed to transmit the rich intellectual and philosophical heritage of the law. The idea that law, like plumbing or baking, was just a trade to be learned like any other, was antithetical to the notion of lawyers as professionals. Law schools were created to make up for this shortcoming and to professionalize the study and practice of law. Credit, or blame, for the fact that you will invest the price of airfare to Paris on the tomes that we call casebooks goes to Christopher Columbus Langdell, the dean of Harvard Law School, who shortly after the Civil War popularized the so-called case method of teaching law, a method that, for better or worse, remains a centerpiece of legal education today. The case method requires you to read and analyze judicial opinions and then endure quizzing on them in class. The case method, or Socratic method, at least as practiced by some law school instructors, has, however, always had its critics. For example, after his first day of law school, Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. told his father, "I could not make sense of one word." And Supreme Court Justice Felix Frankfurter wrote in his autobiography that he found the Socratic method so scary that during his first year of law school, he never spoke, not once. Well, concerning these grim observations, I want to say two things. First of all, the Socratic method actually does have some virtues to commend it. The pure lecture style of learning, to which you may have become accustomed in college, is often boring. Socratic dialogue is not. It engages you in the learning process, and it gets you used to hearing your own voice. Obviously, an important tool for the art of advocacy. Moreover, it demonstrates to you and your classmates that you have something to say and something to contribute to the discussion. I think that you will enjoy the process. Some of our faculty members use it, and some don't. But all of us enjoy a classroom environment in which you, our students, feel sufficiently confident and inspired to ask questions, to form and express your own opinions, and within the bounds of decency and good taste, to challenge us, as we would like to think we challenge you. In any case, the real dilemma confronting law schools today is not whether the Socratic method works, but whether law schools are professional schools or academic institutions. The question is whether the mission of a law school should be to train students to become skilled and successful practitioners, or whether its mission should be to provide a broader education in the evolution, culture, analysis, and reform of laws and legal institutions. Is the purpose of a legal education to teach law as it is, or law as it ought to be? The answer, of course, is obvious. A law school has to do both. The challenge is how. One answer is by combining classroom work with clinical instruction. After your first year, you will have the opportunity to participate in our broad array of clinical course offerings. Like the law office clerkships of yore, our clinical programs will give you an opportunity to function as lawyers under the supervision of practicing attorneys in an environment that helps ensure that your education, that your experience is well-rounded and your training is complete. Take advantage of our clinical course offerings. Professor Hellstream's already pointed out Judge Weinstein up there, and he's noted that our school is a leader in the field. While I'm looking at that group, I hope you will take a look at them as well. Those are the senior judges of this court, the East Federal Court, the Eastern District of New York. One might say that they have reached the pinnacle of a legal profession, And you can see how happy they look. But what I really want to tell you a little bit is how we think, why we think this courthouse is the home court. Starting at the right, now these are the senior judges, is Judge Sterling Johnson, a graduate of Brooklyn Law School. You already know about Judge Weinstein, who has some connection to me, as well as other members of the faculty, but for many years he was an adjunct professor at the law school. Next to Judge Weinstein is Judge Eugene Nickerson. Unfortunately, Judge Nickerson passed away a few years ago, but before that he was a member of the Brooklyn Law School Board of Trustees. Next to him is Judge Henry Bramwell, a graduate of the law school and a member of the Board of Trustees. Moving along, two down, second from the left, my left, you have Judge Glasser. Judge Glasser is a graduate of the law school, a former professor at the law school, and a former dean of the law school. And the gentleman on the far left has no connection to the law school, except that his name is Wexler. During your first year, at least one of your courses will be taught in a small group setting that will enable you to work with your professor one-to-one and learn practice skills such as writing and drafting. Many of you will also take one of your core courses in a small group, and in addition to learning theory and doctrine, you may get your first taste of interviewing clients, examining witnesses, drafting pleadings, negotiating settlements, and perhaps even trying cases. But I also want to help you answer the larger question of why you want to be a lawyer. After all, the study of law will not prepare you to design websites or power grids. It won't teach you to build office towers or splice jeans. What then will your law school education do? It will train you to unravel and solve some marvelously complex problems, to pay meticulous attention to detail and nuance, to master all of that knowledge you need to represent a whole world of clients, such as the kind that Professor Seebach mentioned, who include website designers, doctors, real estate developers, biotech companies, and energy officials. Law school will also enrich you with this extraordinary potential, not only to do well, but to do good. It will enable you to become really proficient in a single area of law or several areas. It will equip you with the potential to make a life, not to mention a living, by influencing the course of private lives and public affairs. Remember Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr., the chap who said that he could not make sense of anything he read on his first day of law school? In 1902, Theodore Roosevelt appointed Holmes to the Supreme Court. In one of his opinions, Holmes observed that life in a complex society such as ours is a web of increasingly tangled relations that have to be sorted out from time to time, and that the job of doing the untangling has been handed over largely to lawyers. What was true in his day is even more true today. If you have any doubt about this, think about what you have read in the New York Times over the last couple of days alone. It is lawyers who will draft, debate, and perhaps implement the laws and regulations proposed to repair our troubled electrical system. It is lawyers who will prosecute and defend the arms dealer charged with attempting to sell a surface-to-air missile to an Al-Qaeda operative. And it is lawyers who will determine whether the government can hold war captives indefinitely without charges. It is lawyers who are negotiating the merger of the New York Philharmonic and Carnegie Hall. It is lawyers who are investigating, prosecuting, and defending the corporate officers and accountants, and perhaps in some case, even the lawyers, who are accused of defrauding stockholders and creditors. And it is lawyers who drafted the new law requiring CEOs to certify their company's financial statements. It is lawyers who are prosecuting overseas piracy of CDs and DVDs, and who will take public the next generation of dot-coms like Google. I could go on and on, but I think my point is clear. It is because your legal education will make it possible for you to do all these things and more that you are here. It is why you chose well when you chose law. I love law school, and I love Brooklyn Law School. I also love the Brooklyn Law School family, of which you are now a member. I hope that 3 or 4 years down the road, at the end of the journey you are beginning tonight, you will feel the same way.